Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 11 transfer plans. We'll also take a look at what just happened in Game Week 10. I don't own HAALAND, I'm a Man United fan. It was pretty shocking. And we'll also discuss if it's time to bring the Norwegian back into our teams this week. If you're enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, you might have clicked on this video ready to laugh at me, and to be honest, you could laugh at me because I did sell HAALAND before a 16-pointer, and not only a 16-pointer, but a 16-pointer against the team that I support. So it couldn't have gone much worse, but it actually wasn't a terrible game week. I finished on 66 points, and it's only a 50k red arrow, almost 50k on the dot at the time of recording. It's my live rank, so it might change slightly, but it looks about like a 50k red, which is nothing. Basically, if I'd have scored 3 or 4 more points, it would have been a green. And of course, if I'd have had HAALAND in my team, I'm probably looking at 75, 80 plus points. However, I had Darwin where HAALAND would have been. I definitely wouldn't have owned Darwin if I had HAALAND in there. And I may not have been able to stretch to Saka, etc. So I don't know that the HAALAND draft would be massively up this week because Darwin pulled through. And because Captain Salah pulled through as well. So I'm not for any second saying that the HAALAND draft probably didn't do slightly better than me this week. But I managed to hold rank pretty much because my players that I picked instead also performed. And this is kind of the key point that I'll keep going over and over. Even if HAALAND batters my rank next week, which he may well do, in any single week, if you go for a team without a big premium, whether that be without Salah, without Son, without HAALAND, without Trippier, whoever it is, as long as the players in and around that do pretty well, it doesn't tend to damage you too much. So for this specific week, obviously Areola a little bit disappointing, but he did make over 3 saves, so he got the save point. Matty Cash came off before Aston Villa lost the clean sheet. He did get a yellow card, but that was a 5-pointer. Simicast gets back-to-back clean sheets. He was actually very, very close to bonus points, but that was nice. Trippier maybe could be an issue moving forward. We'll discuss him in the next section, but Newcastle looked really tired, and that was actually one of Trippier's worst games that I've seen for a very, very long time. So I am wondering whether a rest might be coming for Trippier soon, and I wasn't overly impressed with Newcastle defensively. The midfield came through once again, right? Saka got an assist, Maddison got an assist, Son got a goal and bonus points as well. So those 3 delivered. Salah got a goal as well in the last minutes of the game, not the last minutes, but towards the back end of the game, which he continues to do time and time again. And it's so good that he's on the pitch for every minute because that's what he can do. Similar to Mbeumo, who smashed it again this week. When players are on the pitch, they can get points. Bowen was actually the only midfielder for me to blank in the last 2 weeks combined. I'm fine with Bowen, but I wasn't very impressed with West Ham. And I will have to think about if West Ham continue to look a little bit shaky. Only in the last couple of weeks they've looked a little bit worse. Then maybe we start to think about moving that spot because that is a position in my team which I am happy moving around to whichever players look in form. Darwin saved my week. Like I said, the 16-pointer from HAALAND hurts. It does hurt, and that's the reason I've got a red arrow. If Darwin comes away with a 2-pointer or a 1-pointer, let's say he's benched, then I'm looking like I'm in real trouble. So Darwin saved my week. Delighted with the 10-pointer there. Ollie Watkins did blank, which is frustrating because a lot of people captained him. He did actually have a brilliant game with respect to he got tons of chances. He created chances too. He just wasn't able to finish any of them this week, which was a little bit frustrating. The big thing that I am delighted about is that I benched Alvarez and he didn't also haul, right? HAALAND hauling hurts, but if Alvarez had also hauled on my bench, that would have been shocking and that would have been an even bigger red arrow. So in all honesty, if you'd have told me at the start of the week, Erling Haaland scores a 16-pointer and you get a 50k red arrow, I would have literally bitten your hand off that. I would have loved that. I would have gone, yep, absolutely. So I can't really complain. It's going well at the moment. I'm still now up 2.8 million places since my wildcard 3 weeks ago. So back-to-back greens, a small red arrow. I'll absolutely take that. Let's now look ahead to Game Week 11. So in these videos, I just give you some of my early thoughts about what happened in Game Week 10 and what that means for Game Week 11 and beyond. These are just some real quick fire things, not necessarily overly focusing on data or anything like that. Just some of my immediate thoughts, and of course they might change throughout the week. But firstly, I do want to address it. Erling Haaland was excellent. Man City were brilliant too. And I'm probably lucky to get away with only a 16-pointer. There was one header which Onana saved, which Haaland really should have scored. He also had another big chance, which was around 0.5 XG. So yes, HAALAND is excellent, but it's what we expected, right? Again, you didn't pick You didn't go without Haaland expecting Haaland to blank. You went without Haaland expecting your team in its entirety to potentially outscore a Haaland draft, which at the moment it genuinely is. So I just wanted to note, yes, Haaland is amazing. And I'll discuss in the next couple of sections whether I think it might be worth bringing him back in if you are someone like me that went without Haaland. But just to note, if you captained him, very well done. And I said all week Haaland was a great captaincy option, and he is an excellent option. And he always will be in FPL, regardless of his price. Spurs, Son and Maddison continue to be involved in pretty much every goal for Spurs. And this is what I was kind of trying to get at throughout the week, is that Son and Maddison will be great options regardless of the fixtures. And they don't need to score 3 or 4 goals a week for Son and Maddison to keep returning. If Spurs score 2 goals a week on average, let's say 1.8 goals-ish, I reckon they might score over the upcoming games on average, then I would expect Son and Maddison between them to get at least 1 return, potentially 2. Because outside of those two, who is getting the returns for them? And so when you look at the data, when you look at the percentage of chances that they're involved in, I think Son and Maddison will continue to be really good FPL options. And Son in particular is just so good. Getting all of the chances, the big chances himself. He's such a good finisher as well. I will definitely not be selling Son. And to be honest, for the time being, I'm relatively happy keeping Maddison. I did mention this in the previous section, but Newcastle did struggle, right? They weren't great. They looked very, very tired. And defensively in particular, they were making quite a few big mistakes. Their squad is looking very thin at the moment with a lot of injuries. So Newcastle was still one of the best attacks and the best defences in the league. But with the slightly difficult fixtures coming up, and with how thin their squad is, and with how tired a lot of their players look, I do wonder if they are this elite FP option that they were maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago, and whether the likes of Trippier and Gordon might struggle a little bit in the coming weeks. I still love Callum Wilson. He will still score goals on penalties, great data. But I wonder if Newcastle was still going to be able to put teams to the sword the way they have in the previous few game weeks. So something to monitor. Not necessarily a massive worry right now, but something to think about. I've put Nketiah is not great for Saka and Martinelli. Nketiah is fantastic. We spoke about this in last night's live stream. But for Saka and Martinelli, Jesus is a much better asset and he's a much better player for the team. Because what happens when Jesus plays is he'll drop in, Saka and Martinelli will push in a little bit further, and they're almost playing like inside forwards. Because Nketiah doesn't do that and he plays like a traditional number 9, it basically leaves Martinelli and Saka very, very wide, and they don't get the same chances that they do when Jesus is in the team. So Nketiah is great, but not necessarily great for Saka and Martinelli. Again, that is something that, depending on how long Jesus is out for, we might need to monitor. And Burmo is that guy. And he really is, right? The data all season has been fantastic. He's on penalties, 90-plus minutes every single game. I do want Mbeumo back in desperately, but when I look at the fixtures, it's probably around game week 14. I think it's against Luton that week that I'm considering doing it. The next few just aren't quite there. However, game week 11 is pretty good. It's actually 12 and 13 and maybe 14, wherever the Luton game is. The next 2 or 3 aren't perfect for Mbeumo, but they're also not shocking. I think he's got West Ham at home in game week 11. So maybe could still be an option for game week 11. But for me, when I look at my midfield, it's more of an option that I'm considering around game week 14, 15 to bring in the Brentford man. But he's been brilliant all season. He's right up there with some of the best players in the league for data. And he continues to return as well. And on penalties, which we absolutely love. I put Palmer was brilliant. I think if you had Palmer in game week 10, incredibly unlucky to walk away with nothing. He actually put up 1 expected goal involvement. So at the very least, if you back data, this would suggest that on another day, he may well have got at least 1 return. He created at least 4 or 5 chances for his teammates. He had a couple of chances himself. On another day, like I say, he comes away with a double-digit return there. And I think he looks like he'll be a really good asset to hold moving forward. Brighton just aren't quite clicking right now. Again, in a similar way to Newcastle, that isn't me saying that they're a bad team or that they won't still score goals or they might not still keep some clean sheets, but they just don't quite look there at the moment. And in a similar way to Newcastle, not only do they have European commitments, which is leaving their squad very thin, but they've also had quite a few key injuries as well. And I just think those things coupled together, multiple competitions, key injuries, a bit of a thin squad, it does leave them struggling slightly. So I've not been overly impressed with Brighton the last couple of weeks, and it's another thing that we might need to assess. But I still love Matoma, Adingra, João Pedro as options because the data's there, the fixtures are there, and I still feel like Brighton will still score quite a few goals in the coming weeks. But something, again, in a similar way to Newcastle that we should probably assess coming up. Neto's injury, absolute shame, even not from an FPL perspective, but from a footballing one. Neto has been so good this season. He's actually got the most assists in the Premier League. He's been returned. I think he's got returns in 8 games in a row now. So if you've had Neto, you're probably laughing. But sadly, he did pull up with an injury. It looked like he might have torn his hamstring, but at the very least, may have strained it. And that is usually at least 2 to 4 weeks. So we're probably going to have to sell Neto if we own him in our teams. And that could potentially even be bad news for the likes of Hwang as well, because Neto has assisted a few of Hwang's goals this season. And just in general, he is so important to their attacking play. that I don't think there is a direct replacement for Neto, and I think it will leave them a little bit weak in attack. So maybe not great news for Wolves, and again, something that we need to assess in the coming weeks. Let's see how bad the injury is, but that isn't ideal. Obviously, if you own Neto, really not ideal. If you own Hwang, it could still be a potential issue. And I've just put to end, Darwin was excellent, right? Darwin has been excellent all season. His conversion rate has actually been very good. His finishing has been very good too. His movement has always been one of the best, I genuinely think, in world football. He just needed to add that finishing touch. I think he's got that at the moment. I also think, not only due to Gakpo just coming back from injury, I think Darwin is first choice at the moment. So obviously we know what's happened with Diaz's parents, when our thoughts and prayers are with them. But even once Diaz is back, Diaz obviously plays on the left. I know Darwin can play out there too, but I really do think it's Diaz and Jota on the left, or battling it out for the left, and it's Gakpo and Darwin through the middle. And I do think that Gakpo will probably be favoured in any midweek fixtures, and I think it will be Darwin favoured in the Premier League for most of the games. So I love Darwin. I think he's excellent. The data's there. The finishing has actually been there too. And I think he's first choice at the moment. And with the fixtures coming up for Liverpool, obviously Luton in game week 11, I think Darwin could still be a really nice option. And he could even potentially be a good purchase for game week 11. So there are some of my early thoughts ahead of game week 11. Just a few things that I'm thinking about. I will update my thinking throughout the week, of course. But now let's take a look at how my team is set up for game week 11. So this is how the team is currently lining up for game week 11. I've got 0 in the bank and 1 free transfer. So really not much flexibility. If I need to make any upgrades, it would be a hit. And to be honest, the team's not great for this week. There are a lot of players kind of playing against each other, or at least 2 players playing against each other in Saka and Trippier. I do have a bit of a benching headache, which I'll discuss in a second. Obviously, Son and Maddison against Chelsea at home. Will Darwin start again? And if not, do I want to risk starting him, or do I want to bench him? So there are a few things that I need to think about, and I'm certainly not expecting tons of points from my team this week. And of course, I don't own Erling Haaland at the moment, who has Bournemouth at home. Bournemouth are the 2nd or 3rd worst defence in the league. Haaland is the best player in FPL, and comfortably the best captain in game week 11. So this game week 9, when Haaland played Brighton, and game week 11, when Haaland plays Bournemouth, those were the 2 weeks. Obviously, he battered me this week as well, but those were the 2 weeks ahead of time where we looked at it and went, that could be bad, right? Brighton at home, Bournemouth at home. Those are not fixtures that you don't want to own him for. And even in and around that, your team also have tricky fixtures. Like for me, one of the benefits of going without was to have the likes of Trippier. He's got Arsenal at home this week. I'm actually considering benching him. So not great. This is going to be the week where I'm going to suffer, and I'm expecting another red arrow, but it's just hoping that some of the other players, Salah captain, Darwin, Tsimikas, etc., pull through for me, and maybe Son and Maddison do get something against Chelsea. Really the big things for me to work out this week, as well as do I want to use my transfer, and I well could, and we'll discuss my transfer options in the next section. It's, what do I do with my benching headaches? And I know this is one of, maybe you could say, the limitations of spreading the funds around, but I don't think it necessarily is. I think it gives me some good options, right? It allows me to try and make a decision and to try and bench the right player. And if you look back to the previous 2 game weeks, I benched Bowen for his 2-pointer in game week 8. And then, who did I bench in game week 9? I can't remember. And then game week 10, I benched, obviously, Alvarez for his 2-pointer as well. So lots of the time. Oh, I benched Darwin for his 4-pointer in game week 9. But remember, all of my attackers outscored Darwin. So that is 3 weeks in a row. And I know I won't always get that lucky. I've got the benching decision spot on. And having a deep squad has allowed me to bench a player that has pretty much blanked or not scored many points. So I don't have an issue with the benching headache, but for me, it really has to be, do I start Trippier or Guéhi? Which in my head sounds silly, right? You start Kieran Trippier, but as I said, not been overly impressed with Newcastle in their last couple of games. I think Arsenal will score, and therefore I'm relying on attacking return from Trippier. Do I think a clean sheet for Guéhi is more likely than attacking return for Trippier? Maybe. So I'm not sure at the moment, but I'm just leaning towards Trippier, because if Trippier gets anything, clean sheet or attacking return, he's usually good for bonus points as well. So that's the first difficult decision. And then I've just got to bench one of my 8 attackers. And obviously Salah's not going to be benched. Watkins isn't going to be benched. Alvarez isn't. Son isn't. And as long as there's no real reason that I think Darwin will, I won't bench him in my team. So really it's between Saka, Maddison and Bowen. And I've just lent Bowen at the moment because I'm not overly impressed with West Ham in their last couple of fixtures. And Saka and Maddison are both putting up slightly better data. Saka is on penalties as well. And Maddison has just been exceptional in recent weeks. So it's just kind of more so that I like Saka and Maddison more as players. Not necessarily that the fixture is better, because really the fixture is probably better for Bowen. But honestly, in the last 24 hours, I've had Saka benched at points. I've had Trippier benched at points. I've had Maddison. So this is something that I really do need to think about throughout the week, is who of those do I bench? And then the final thing to think about and it's the man on the thumbnail, is it worth this week taking a hit to get Haaland back? Now, I've got a couple of issues with this. Number one, I don't like his fixtures from Game Week 12 onwards, right? I don't want Haaland for 12, 13, 14, or 15, really. I'm looking at bringing him back in 16 for Luton. So I don't want Haaland for the next 3 or 4 game weeks after Bournemouth, right? I think my team is better than the Haaland team for that period, which is one of the reasons I went without him. So I don't really want him for 12 onwards. The other issue I have is that because I only have one free transfer, it would be a -8 at least to get Haaland in. I would have to sell Trippier, I would have to sell one of Watkins or Darwin, and I would have to sell probably either Bowen, Maddison or Saka to get him in. I would have to make a real downgrade on Trippier to basically a non-playing defender. Saka or Maddison would have to go down to like an Adingra, and then I would have to lose, like I said, one of Watkins or Darwin. So it's not that I think Haaland's bad. I just don't think this is the week to do it because I have to sell good options who I like for the next few, bring in a player that I don't necessarily think is perfect for the upcoming fixtures, and take a -8 hit. So for those reasons, I don't think Haaland's going to be coming back in, and that was never the plan. Just because he's done well in Game Week 10, wasn't the plan to bring him in for Game Week 11. So for the time being, the plan is no Haaland. The plan is probably to roll a transfer, but just in case it's not, let's discuss my potential transfer options in the next section. So guys, moving on to my Game Week 11 watch list. And to be honest, it's very similar to what it was in Game Week 10. There were just a few subtle changes there. Defenders, I didn't really want to put anyone in here because at the moment, I don't desperately need to bring in or want to bring in any defenders. I'm very happy with my defense, but I am thinking that there is a chance at some point in the near future that I want to lose Trippier to upgrade some of my attack or potentially to get Haaland back in the future. Again, I don't plan on doing it this week. I will have to lose Trippier at some point, and I am missing an Arsenal defender, especially for their really nice fixture against Burnley at home in Game Week 12. Gabriel being benched, I don't really know what to make of this yet. A lot of Arsenal fans, non-FPL Arsenal fans, are just saying it was just a bit of rotation. Sheffield United is the easiest fixture in the league. He rested Ødegaard, who had a slight issue, rotated Gabriel to give obviously other players a chance in the starting 11. So maybe it was just a simple piece of rotation, but it's not ideal that the first player to miss out in that defence in an easy fixture is Gabriel, especially when someone like Saliba also needs a rest. So it's not ideal, but I still feel like Gabriel is first choice, but I would maybe play it safe at the moment if I had the funds and go for a Saliba. But really, defensive transfers aren't a priority for me at the moment. Midfield, I could see myself making a move soon. It probably would be Maddison or Bowen. I don't want to sell Saka because I've just brought him in and I've brought him in for reasons and I like the fixtures. Still on pens some of the time / most of the time. Good data, right? I don't feel the need to sell Saka at the moment. So, and I'm obviously not going to sell Mohamed Salah either, and I don't want to sell Son. So really it is Maddison and Bowen that could make way in. And here are some of the players that I'm looking at. I still do think, despite a disappointing Game Week 10, that Matoma and Adingra are both really good options moving forward. Diaby obviously got a 13-pointer. He looked really, really good against Luton. And well done if you do have Diaby. You're probably rewarded for a bit of patience there. And Burmo, as we spoke about, continues to look absolutely brilliant. And I know you'll laugh at me, especially after that performance, but Fernandes is still an option considering the fixtures over the next few. My only issue is on Fernandes, and I'm going to have a look at all of the players that are in this position, but I think Fernandes is now on 4 yellow cards, and we're going to have to take a look at this over the coming weeks. Players that are on 4 yellows may be worth waiting on, especially if they are players that traditionally do pick up a lot of yellow cards, and Fernandes is one of those. I would expect Fernandes to get a 5th booking pretty soon. And so for that reason, maybe not the best transfer in. And then forwards, again, I don't really want to lose any of my forwards. I like Alvarez, I like Darwin, I like Watkins. I would love Erling Haaland, of course, but he is expensive and I'm happy with my team for now. Outside of that, João Pedro and Edouard, I like at a cheaper price. If I do want to downgrade Darwin to upgrade elsewhere, then it probably would be João Pedro or Edouard, especially with the fixtures that both Brighton and Crystal Palace have coming up. I obviously absolutely love Callum Wilson as well. Whenever he plays, great data on penalties. I just don't know how long he'll stay fit for, especially with all of the injuries that they've got. He's going to have to play a lot of minutes at the moment. And then, of course, Erling Haaland. But like I said, that's probably a transfer that will go down further down the line. Around Game Week 16 is the plan. If he starts getting back-to-back hauls, then maybe it's something I'll have to consider. But I'm not too worried for now. Like I said, 50k red arrow in Game Week 10. It's really not a huge issue. I'm smiling through the pain. So that is the plan. Let me know what you think of my team. If we just skip back to my team, this is how it's currently set up. The key things for me is, do I need to use the transfer? And if not, what am I doing about the benching decisions this week? I would love to know, out of Trippier versus Gahey, who would you bench? And then out of Saka, Maddison and Bowen, who would you bench as well? I'm pretty happy with the team for Game Week 11. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 11 transfer plans and a little bit of me crying over not having Haaland and Man United losing. If you did enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. Let's aim for 2,000 likes on today's video. Make sure to subscribe as well. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.